Welcome into another edition of the All 32 Pod. This is the All Irritated edition because I saw a crappy game in person on Saturday, turned around and watched a crappy game of your team on Sunday. We're going to talk about both of those crappy performances on this program, but we will bring the juice to it, so you'll want to listen even though we're talking about bad football. A reminder, this show brought to you by Prize Picks, the exclusive daily fantasy partner of the CLNS Media Network, and Game Time. Best tickets, best prices to get you into any game or any event you want to see. That, of course, I believe is Will Parkinson. I did not say that early at the beginning of this program. Or if I did, I forgot already. That's Will. I'm Mike. Let's jump right into it, Will, because it was nasty. I wanted to start with the Patriots because that was the first game of the weekend that I saw. They lose 40-7 to the Chargers. It was not that close. It's so interesting when you look at this season. And we sat here last week and I said, what they did against Buffalo, even though they didn't win the game, but they had a representative performance that made Mayo talk like he was coming back and everybody feeling a little bit better. See, we're showing what we can do and the hard work works. And I said, on this very program, it meant absolutely nothing if they couldn't duplicate and have a reasonable performance against another playoff team in the Chargers. Instead, it was their worst game of the year. They allowed scoring drives on 7 straight possessions, and if not for a couple drops, it would have been 8 straight possessions. They never once got into the red zone. They could not protect their quarterback. Their quarterback looked like a rookie at times in this one too, jumping out of the pocket too early, exposing himself to a hit in which he got his bell rung and had to leave the game for a series before returning. And this all leads me back to the question that we have debated over and over again about Jerod Mayo and this coaching staff. And I ask you, as someone who's watched from afar but watches closely, because it's another AFC East team, has Jerod Mayo done anything, and has this coaching staff done anything that tells you, yes, run it back with them again next year, and with a more talented roster, they'll point it in the right direction?
Not really. I think he keeps his job still, but that's not by any merit or like by any metric you could track. Look, he was given a raw deal in the sense of
absolutely, yes, absolutely.
Post Belichick, rookie quarterback that they wanted to develop. They didn't draft the high floor, lower ceiling guy. They drafted the really high ceiling guy that needed to sit a little bit. The roster is objectively horrendous, as we know. I think, look, they were a team that, even if it may have been just okay, we thought 3, 4 wins, 5 wins, you could talk yourself into 7 if they, had gotten lucky here or there. What was so disheartening about Sunday was that, as you mentioned, or Saturday, I apologize, is what you mentioned was it felt like, okay, all the reports are it's going to be Van Pelt out, Covington back. He's Mayo's guy. He'll get another year with more talent, Barmore back. They'll add pieces, the whole 9 yards. They'll get a new OC, and someone's going to want the job because it's Drake May and all this cap space. They'll fix O-line. They'll get a receiver and 8, 9 win team next year, one more offseason, and we're a playoff contender, division title contender. That's all well and good. And that all still could happen. Knowing that Mike Vrabel wants this job, or at least every report you hear is that he wants this job, and knowing, hey, he did so much with so little, and the one thing he didn't have in Tennessee was the quarterback. If he could kind of come in and build this thing with all their assets, he's a Patriot guy. He can do things a little the Patriot way, but he's not a Bill guy where Mayo is a Bill guy. There's just so much that's appealing almost about the other side of it. And Sunday was so disheartening in the aspect of at home, kind of coming off West Coast team coming east. The Chargers needed the game, but didn't need the game. If in all intents and purposes, they could have won one of the two. And it was just zero energy, zero effort. The comments after the game, look, what we'll talk about when we talk about the Jets. And this time of year, it feels like the 17-game season, even more so than before. We see a lot of guys. It's really hard to keep people engaged for 17 weeks. And even good teams, it's hard to keep people locked in. But man, that was tough. It was a tough look, and it makes you think, okay, cool, you didn't get killed by the Bills. Great.
Right.
But that's not a victory. They still lost the game, and it's the same. Oh, hey, the Jets have lost a bunch of one-score games. That great. And hey, new coach or just this little thing here or there. There just feels like there's other options that would be better than Mayo, but I still have a hard time seeing Mayo get fired knowing he was Robert Kraft's guy. It was in his contract. He was getting this job. They didn't even interview people last year. he can probably sell the Robert Kraft, Jonathan Kraft, and co. and say, hey, listen, like I said, the roster, I had no hope. The Bills were a buzzsaw, and like, hey, look, we were competitive against Miami. We were competitive against the Jets, and we beat the Jets, and like, it wasn't all bad. And May's good, and see, like, this is my, I developed him.
8 1-score games.
Yeah, and 8 1-score games, and look at Christian Gonzalez, and it's like the top 20 picks, like they should be good.
Yeah,
I think he'll do enough to convince the Bills are going to play nobody this week. The Patriots should at least have some pulse. Look, if they get smoked this week in New England, we might actually have to have a different conversation, because that'll be backups versus starters, backup session. I'll have you talk about May, but it just, something's off, and I don't think in year one you should be having guys quit. I think I'm not making excuses for the Jets. Interim coach, a lot of veterans that were kind of mercenary types that have quit on the. It happens. I hate it, but it does happen. This is a young team. They shouldn't be in mercenary mode yet. That's a lot of rookies and stuff too. That's not great.
Yeah, so I tweeted, and when you're 3-11, 3-12, 3-13, I'm sorry,
guys quit.
It's just a way of life. Like, guys start making business decisions about their future, and like, do I really want to get hurt this late in the year and then have to rehab when I've made it through the season, whatever it may be, or hey, we're just not going anywhere. My money's guaranteed, or I'm going to go someplace else. They don't want me. Why would I give my best effort? I know that you can look at it and say that's a loser's mentality, but like, that's
also just being realistic.
Yeah, it's the business. So I wasn't surprised that some of the comments after the game popped up about that, and Mayo was asked about that again on Monday. Pointed to, by the way, he thought they played hard and guys were flying around. Did point to some plays on field goal and extra point attempts where guys just weren't giving a bleep, which I kind of feel like most of the time guys aren't giving a bleep. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. I definitely think it was eye-opening for ownership to sit there in a stadium that was half full, to hear the Fire Mayo chants in the second half, and to watch a Chargers team that's definitely more talented than you, but that's not a super talented football team. And for them to beat you, and they just went through the same thing you did in the offseason, right? They purged their coaching staff. They went out and did a real GM search, interviewed like 10 people, settled on Joe Ortiz from the Ravens. Obviously, Harbaugh was their first choice, but they interviewed 12 or 13 people for the vacancy, and were ready to move on to Mike Vrabel as their second choice, had Harbaugh not taken the gig. So they conducted a real search. They got a coach with a real vision of what he wanted to do. Ortiz went out and got him the best players he could for this year to help execute it. You see a team that has bought in completely to their identity. He's elevated the quarterback, who was very talented to begin with. He's playing the best football of his career, even though he's throwing to a bunch of nobodies aside from Ladd McConkey, who is 5'9", 10, 11, whatever he is. Not like this dominating physical presence, not a Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, DK Metcalf type physical elite receiver. So you contrast that with what you had on the other side, where they didn't conduct a GM search. Well, they did, but it was half-assed because they already knew that Wolf was going to get the gig. They didn't conduct a head coach search because, as you mentioned, it was already in Mayo's contract. For the first time in nearly 25 years, they had the opportunity to feel out the rest of the league and talk to people, the brightest minds, the best and brightest upcoming guys, or even some guys that stepped back and then were trying to get back in the league. They did none of it. And now they're sitting here.
Yeah, they only did it with OC, and it was too late at that point.
Right. And they had to interview 12 guys, and most of the guys were not enthralled with the interview process, who was involved in the interview process, and were easily like, yeah, no, I'm good. And they had to settle on their 12th interview, and that was Alex Van Pelt. So I think it was stark for ownership to look down and say, the Spanoses, who normally get laughed at, they did their business right. And we, who think we're smarter than everyone else, what did we do? What have we gotten here? So
I just don't think they want that.
They definitely don't want it. It's bad press. If you drop a guy out 1 year, especially with the amount of loyalty that Robert has shown Jerod Mayo, yeah, it's going to look bad. But the question is, do you double down on it without any proof that he's going to get you better? That's the big thing.
Yeah, I think that I wouldn't keep him, like I said, but because I just think there's better options. But I think Jerod Mayo will do enough and get enough of a leash to get one more year and say, listen, let me get at least more than 1 year with the rookie quarterback. Let me get at least more than 1 year building my type of team and whatever. And we could all laugh at that, but this is the way things work. And like, I just, Kraft is so conscious of their image league wide. And for them to hire Jerod Mayo, and we can go down, I don't want to go totally down this road, but like for them to hire a minority candidate and then fire him within a year, I think it's going to, I don't know that he wants to be the lead on First Take every morning. It feels like that's not a Patriot thing. That's the Panthers do that, and the Jets and these other teams that are on First Take and usually not for the right reasons. The Patriots usually aren't that way. And I just have a feeling he'll do enough of like, hey, give me 1 year with my offensive coordinator. I know I didn't get to hire my own guy last year, and look at Drake May, and like, isn't that the point of a head coach? Hey, we played close games mostly, and the quarterback, like, he'll do enough. But if I was Robert Kraft, I'd say, listen, that's all well and good. I'll take the slap on the wrist.
Right.
I'm going to bring Mike Vrabel in. He's going to bring in a good offensive coordinator, which he's proven to do, and we're going to get this thing going. We're going to win 10 games next year with a great offseason.
You make a great point about how Robert does not want to be seen as the bad guy ever. Remember, they had to have the joint press conference with Belichick for a minute to basically say, like,
you're
it's
fired.
a mutual decision. And then later, he's got to tell everybody.
Crapped all over him in a documentary
but
series
he
for
couldn't
5
be,
hours.
Yeah, he couldn't be in the moment. He couldn't just say, look, we've been nothing since Brady, basically. We're going in the wrong direction. He gave us a great 2 decades. The last 4 years have kind of sucked. We've got to move on. And I think all people would have said, like, okay, at least you're owning it, right? Instead of mutual decision. Nobody bought that it was a mutual decision, right? And Bill's taken a million shots at them since he left, and they're taking a million shots at him back. And it's embarrassing. He does not like to be in that swirl, though. I want to hit you with one more thing because we spent a lot of time on a bad football team and a bad game. But I'm pretty passionate about this. Now the Patriots have the number 1 overall pick in the draft.
Yep.
And if they lose on Sunday, it's theirs. There's already rumblings about to play Drake May or not play Drake May. I wrote a column a short time ago. We're taping this on Monday at 1:44 in the afternoon, where I think it is the biggest, speaking of losers mentality, I think it is a loser mentality to not play your quarterback. I understand the value of the number 1 pick. I understand that, hey, there may only be 2 quarterbacks at the top of the draft. And, I don't know that you're going to get the same loot that, say, the Bears got when they traded with the Panthers a couple years ago, the Bryce Young pick. But, okay, let's say you still pick up a couple extra picks, including a first or second next year. I get it. I get the lure. But you suck. You can't win. You've won 1 game that Drake May has started and finished. Now, he has 2 career wins because he got the win over the Jets early in the year, but that was Jacoby Brissett played the 3 quarters, led the comeback victory after he got concussed. I've heard a lot of talk about, well, he could get hurt. The same people that are saying, well, he could get hurt are the same people saying, I don't understand why they're not running him more. So you're contrasting yourself there, contradicting yourself. Like, to me, I get it, but I roll him out there. And look, if the Bills, and I went back and looked at this, in 2021, they were locked into the 2 seed. He played his starters for a half against the Dolphins at home. Dolphins had to win to get into the postseason. Josh Allen threw 4 touchdown passes in the first half. They won 56-28, knocked the Finns out, kept their guys tuned up. The year before, they were locked into the 5th seed, the Bills were. McDermott played the starters for a quarter. Josh got 2 series. They lost the game, lost to the Jets, I believe it was 13-6. Yep. But so that's the past experience we have with McDermott. My guess is he leans more towards playing them a little bit longer, especially because you have the Josh Allen for MVP thing. Like, I know it's odd to say, but he probably wants to get him a couple touchdowns in the game to just kind of give his numbers a little kick and remind people this is the guy you should be voting for. What would Will Parkinson do if he was in charge? Not the coach, but in charge of the Patriots.
Yeah, Drake May, no offense. Drake May is going to be a star, and the Patriots got a great one. No offense, they've won 1 game with him. So it's not like he's like a guaranteed win.
Yes.
And this we're not at the Josh Allen, Joe Burrow like level where it's like, oh, Mahomes level. We're at the he looks promising, but they lose still with him. So not for nothing. Like, I understand if you want to be the trade back team, like that makes sense. But right now, theoretically, you'd be trading back with the Giants. the Raiders and teams that like maybe if you end up trading back or you out of the Travis Hunter sweepstakes, if you win this one, you lose this, or sorry, you win this one or lose this one and then you trade back, you might trade back too far and end up with like a guy who may or may not be a tackle, or you're ending up with an edge rusher, and that's cool, but those guys are going to be there. That to me, like, I'd at least half play Drake May. If you're concerned with the head stuff, which is a real conversation, that's a very different conversation. But don't tell me it's because you want the number one pick or don't want the number one pick. If it's
just tell him not to run in that case.
He also needs the reps.
Drake, I get it, but you're playing from the pocket today, and if you just
get rid of the ball,
get rid of the ball.
Like, yeah, but also like he needs the reps. Like this is a guy who like couldn't you benefit? Like most of these things don't benefit teams down the stretch, and we've talked about a lot of these games where what's it really matter and blah blah blah. For like I don't know, CeeDee Lamb went on IR. Could CeeDee have played? Probably, but whatever. This is a rookie who needs reps. He didn't start 17 games this year. He's missed time with injury. Like I'd like to see him get another week of reps. I'd like to see him get would it be the worst thing in the world if he went out there and threw for 245, 2 touchdowns and a pick and said, hey man, like I've had 2 pretty decent, games against the Bills now. And it's just something, you feel confident next year when you play them because you're going to need to try to beat them. They're probably going to lose anyways. And if they win, what are they going to fall to 3, 4, and still end up with Travis Hunter, one of the edge rushers they wanted anyways. Unless you're dead set of like, we know we're going to be able to trade back and we're going to get multiple ones, or we're going to trade this number 1 pick for Jamar Chase, whatever.
Right.
Then that's a different conversation. But even like let him at least run out there, go through it, treat it like a preseason game if you want to, but just flat out benching him. That's weak to me.
Yeah. And I've gotten the same thing, where people are like, well, they got to play Javon Baker. They got to play Jaheim Bell, the tight end. They've got to play Jalen Polk, who's, gotten like 10 snaps in the last 2 games. And I'm like, isn't that part of their responsibility? I'm like, they've tried to develop these guys. They haven't earned the playing time. So now I'm just going to give it to them in week 18 because why? Because that rewards them for their professionalism, their play when they've been on the field. Like it's a whole thing like that. But this is what happens, Will. This is what happens when you suck and you continue to suck.
I thought you had the red and blue glasses on now. That's what Twitter was saying.
Yeah. I find it very aggravating if you couldn't tell. Let's hear from Prize Picks, which does not make me aggravated. In fact, I love Prize Picks. It's the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members, billions of dollars in award winnings, Prize Picks has made the daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You pick more or less on at least 2 players, up to 6, for a shot to win 1,000 times your cash. Did you get that? 1,000 times your cash. It's playoff time, so it's now or never. Don't miss out on the last few weeks of football action with Prize Picks, the best place to win cash while watching the playoffs. There's so many things that they give me, and I didn't star them off before I read this. Well, I'll just do this. How about this? Just download the app today. How's that? That's a good place to start. Use the code CLNS. Get $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, download the code CLNS. Get $50 off instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. You don't even have to win. To get that cash in your account, Prize Picks, run your game. And let me tell you, that was not my best ad read ever, but I do love Prize Picks, and we use it all the time.
I've been getting smoked in my.
My God, my Lad McConkey was not going to. They weren't. This just shows you they weren't going to let Lad McConkey do it. That was my opinion. They just wouldn't. Of all the things that were going to happen in that game, Lad McConkey wouldn't go bananas. Lad McConkey should have had 2 touchdowns, 100 yards. It was gross. It's absolutely gross.
Not our best.
No, we called this the game of the week going into it, and I don't know that it lived up to the billing, but the Vikings have improved to 14-2, beating the Packers 27-25. It got kind of away from the Packers. It was a 3-score game until late in the 4th quarter. They made a sort of a flurry to make it look a little closer than it was. My takeaway from this one, though, Will, is that the Vikings can absolutely, positively beat anyone, and they will have a chance at Detroit next weekend. A battle for the number 1 seed, no matter what happens with Detroit in this game tonight as they play San Francisco. They're rolling. They believe their coaching is outstanding. And I think if you haven't seen the video of the reaction to Sam Darnold when he came into the locker room, I know you were probably bouncing up and down, throwing stuff too. You were all excited about it.
Oh, yeah.
Darnold was 33 of 43 for 377, 3 touchdowns. He had the 1 bad pick, but by and large, he's continuing to play great football for a Vikings team that getting as little respect as possible despite being 14-2.
Yeah, I mean, they won 9 in a row. What are we doing here?
Yeah.
And like I said, like their 2 losses, I mean, they would lose to Detroit by what, 1, 2? They had the 2 losses in 3 weeks, I believe. And that was it. And like started out hot. They had a blip, but like, again, it's not like as if they weren't sitting there and like, oh, the rust fell off. Like they've dominated a lot of these games. And yesterday, their kicking's awful. That's something that to monitor. The Vikings, obviously, unfortunately, Vikings fans are very familiar with a great Vikings team with kicking issues. 98 title game, but yeah, but yesterday, like that they should have been up 21-3 at half pretty comfortably, even 16-3, 20-3, whatever it is, like should have been chilling. Sam makes the one error. It's his 1 weak spot. I don't know why more teams don't just.
You tweeted it.
He did it against the Patriots like 9 times in his career. He threw one. I remember against Indy, Xavier Rhodes got him a couple times. Like that squat cover 2 corner. He loves throwing that corner out or that deep, 18-yard out, and they just take it away every time. But he was awesome yesterday. Justin Jefferson was awesome. Addison should have had a touchdown, a second touchdown, but some of the play call, play design, they had Jordan Love in hell for like 3.5 quarters. I thought the Packers were outcoached. They were outplayed. I still think the Packers are very good, but I do think like at some point now, like they've lost to Detroit twice and Minnesota twice, and those are that's the class of the division, and it's the class of the NFC right now, right? They're the two highest winning teams. So while I do think Green Bay is very good, I think we talked about like, hey, this is a moving point where if you beat Minnesota, it's like, hey, Jordan Love was hurt the first match. Jordan Love was hurt yesterday. I know they had some matchup issues. And the Packers, the Jair thing's weird. Nixon before the game saying Sam Darnold doesn't do anything that like impresses us or scares us. I'm like, dude, he has 800 yards and 6 touchdowns against you, and they've beaten you both times. Like at some point, like I understand he's not Patrick Mahomes, but he's going to finish top 5 in the MVP. So Minnesota, I think most people will pick Detroit on Sunday night, and it could be the game of the year. This is a weird one because in some ways, is it better to be the 5 because you're just going to probably play the same team again in 2 weeks? I don't think it is because I still think both these teams are indoor teams. They want to be at home. They want that home atmosphere. They're both fast, right? You want to be on that fast track. And if you're Detroit or Minnesota, you might end up having to face each other again, but I'm sure Minnesota would rather a third matchup in Minnesota, and I'm sure Detroit would rather a third matchup 2 in a row at home against them and say, hey, can we get one of the 2?
Yep.
It might not work that way, right? And who knows? And Tampa maybe or Atlanta maybe upsets one of these 2, and we're not talking about that. Maybe there's an upset elsewhere in the conference, but I'm just really impressed with Minnesota from a defensive perspective. A lot of talent, but also the coaching's excellent. Offense, same thing. A lot of talent. The coaching's excellent. If you give Sam time, they are going to beat it. They're not going to get beaten because he has the arm talent and they have the weapons that rival anybody's in the league. It's harder to find a better 3 than Hockenson, Jefferson, and Addison. I don't know that from a pass catcher perspective.
And Naylor's a nice little piece, like because he's got that speed, right?
Jones is a really good player still.
Yep.
Even Cam Akers yesterday had some effective, moments. CJ Ham too is a guy who like they can leak out. There's just weapons. They throw them at you. And like I said, I'm not down on Green Bay. It did feel like, hey, kind of a missed op. And now it's like the 4, I'd argue, maybe not their toughest games, but 4 of their toughest games. They've lost all 4 now. And it's like, yeah, you're in them and it's close in a lot of them, but like,
but then is it close?
Yeah.
It's like they're both games against the Vikings. They were getting their doors blown off. And then there was a late flourish.
And Detroit, one of them, they blew their doors off too.
Yeah. So like, I think where I sort of landed on with Green Bay, and as much as I love the pieces that they have in place, and like I've talked about here, I think LaFleur's done a better job this year. Hafley has certainly made their defense far more competitive than it's been in recent years. But like, they've struggled rushing the passer, and I think you saw that yesterday. I mean, Sam does hold the ball for a long time, and a couple times it got him in trouble, but by and large, he had time to stand back there and do what he wanted to do. And so then what's happening? Hafley has to come up with some exotic blitz, right, or simulated pressures and try to like confuse or scheme a way to get to the quarterback.
Yeah.
And the problem with that is that Kevin O'Connell has got all the freaking answers. I mean, if he should be coach of the year. Flores should be the
Yeah.
assistant of the year. Like
Yep.
but like O'Connell is the offensive coordinator. Who's done it better this year? Like Monken, I guess, in Baltimore. Like there's very few. Yeah, right. And yes,
Monken's got a 2 or 3 time MVP potentially. It's like the one
Bingo.
thing I'll say is like with the Packers, I thought Jordan Love was fine yesterday. I'm nothing bashing him, right? Obviously, he's the high QBR and he finished decently. There was a point in the fourth quarter yesterday where Sam Darnold had like quadruple the amount of yards he did in an NFL game. And I'm not saying that's really an indictment on Jordan Love as much as it's like that they did everything possible. They gave a big time blueprint both games into how to beat them. Scheme wise, like they got pressure on him. They made him try to step up in the pocket and start doing different things. They made him they took away a lot of those deep shots. I said the one thing I was curious what's going to happen is would they bring pressure or sit back? And Flores mixed it up fantastic. They bring Cashman a lot on these blitzes, and he's been a heck of a player for a little bit now. But like he's had a really good year, and since he's been back, this defense looks back to kind of what we were expecting. Even like just look at the way they're having fun. And I know it sounds stupid, but like it does matter, and it's like it starts to become like contagious a little bit. Like I said, I know we'll preview Lions Vikings. A lot of people will be like, oh, this game doesn't really matter. They're both in 14 wins. Both these teams could use, though, a week to like get right. Sam talked about in a post-game interview with Uchenna Nwosu, which I know he didn't talk about. He was like, yeah, my foot's pretty destroyed.
Yep.
And we know Detroit, obviously, so many injuries. I probably an early look ahead. I'd probably pick Minnesota next week just because I think Detroit's going to be like, oh, anywhere, anytime. They'll have that mindset and like they're still really banged up. But I don't know if they go 15-2 at the 1 seed, pretty impressive. 14-3 without the 1 seed, still awesome.
Yeah. I mean, it's been a remarkable year. Now they just need a little playoff success to sort of back it up and sort of further the resumes of a bunch of people in that building. Let's hear about Game Time, which again, you got NFL games. You're going to have the playoffs coming up. You have college football playoffs are ongoing. Those tickets are outrageous. But if you want to go, easy way to do it. Just go to Game Time. Download the app. They've got Game Time picks, filters out the fluff to show you incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands and thousands of tickets. One of the things you got to love about it, too, is you can see the view of the seat from the app. So before you even buy it, you go, all right, where am I sitting? Okay, that looks good. But now go click on the seat. And then it shows you exactly the vantage point that you have. No hidden fees. The money is there. You understand what you've got to pay. They don't hit you with something else after you're done. So what you got to do is just download the app, create an account, use the code CLNS for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create that account, redeem the code CLNS for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Oh, it's game time.
Mike, before we go to the next game,
yes,
trivia here.
Ooh.
What would you guess Sam Darnold's career record as a starter is? He started 72 games in the NFL.
$72 games. He's 14-2 this year. I'm going to say he is now 40-32.
35-37.
Okay.
But he came into like the year, obviously. He was 13-25 with the Jets, 8-9 with Carolina, 14-0-1 with San Francisco. 14-2 this year. Almost a 500 quarterback now as a starter, which considering where he was the first 5 years of his career is actually pretty crazy.
Yeah. He's going to make a lot of money. And I think a lot of people sort of pointed that video where they were celebrating him and lifting him up on their shoulders in the locker room.
Yeah, how do you go in that locker room and say, hey, JJ might be good?
Yeah.
But like
I think at the very least you got to franchise him and run it back for one more year and then see what happens,
Yeah.
And I know that puts a little bit of a financial bind on him, but unless he falls on his face here this week coming up against Detroit and then the postseason, and even then, still think it'd be pretty hard.
Yeah, I was gonna say, look at the Bucs last year. Like they kind of had it. I think Sam's having a better year than Baker last year, and
yeah,
I think the Lions and the Bucs are both quite happy they were able to find their quarterback in maybe a non-traditional way in the 2024 landscape.
100%. Let's go to the other game that I pronounced that we were all going to be irritated about. I watched it from my couch yesterday. The Buffalo Bills led 40-0, beat the Jets 40-14, 16 penalties for the Jets, 3 turnovers. But 2 things that really jumped out to me besides what I saw on the field or didn't see on the field, and these were in the piece by Zach Rosenblatt, right, of The Athletic. DJ Reed talking about guys not putting good stuff on tape. He mentions 40-0. He goes, that shit's embarrassing, point blank, period. Sauce Gardner thought that, quote, some people might be checked out. Bill, one of the things that we talked about last week is at least the Jets had been competitive and had been in games and it showed some toughness. That toughness went by the wayside in the second half in Buffalo, like just complete disintegration. And once the ball started rolling, it was literally like, yep, I don't want to be out here anymore. Let's get me to the final week and get me on vacation.
Yeah, every game this year, the season's had either 2 results of Jets games, right? Like win close one, lose a close one. But pretty much what they've played 15 so far, so 12 of them have been that way, right? It's 1-score games or 8 points, 9 points, whatever. But it's been like, you have to watch to the final whistle. The second the Jets took a safety in the second quarter, you could have turned the game off and you would have been able to predict exactly what was going to happen. Against Arizona, this very similar thing happened. They started out on defense getting kind of not shredded, but first drive, Cardinals went down and scored. First drive, the Bills went down and scored. The Jets drove, went 4 and out, in the red zone against Arizona. I believe they kicked a field goal, but next drive, same thing. Rodgers was bad yesterday. And more importantly than being bad, I thought he was the worst kind of Aaron Rodgers, the one that makes you say, I'm good on next year.
Yeah.
There's been a lot of moments this year where even if he hasn't been great, like I get it, right? Like the Colts game, I know he took the bad sack at the end and with 30 seconds left, but it's not like they hadn't put them in a position to drive before and they had just gone down and scored, right? Or like, hey, Seattle, he threw the pick 6, but he also threw for 300 yards and a couple of touchdowns and was pretty good majority of the rest of the game. He was bad yesterday. He looked checked out. He looked like he didn't want to be there. He didn't jump on a fumble, which he allayed the effort. Not totally Cam Newton style in the Super Bowl, but definitely wasn't going to he wasn't going to risk getting hurt. He did jump down, so I don't want to stir up the pot there, but it wasn't.
It was definitely a half-assed effort.
It was a half-assed effort. He got the unnecessary roughness call, which it was hilarious. But the second pick, the first one, not his fault at all. The Jets lost Morgan Moses, no Olu-Fashanu. The second Moses went out, the game was over. But I guess long story short, Rodgers 3 times yesterday looked at Allen Lazard. And anytime Allen Lazard's targeted, I had someone in the league, a front office person in the league, text me that was watching the game and said, does Lazard have more penalties and drops than he does catches this year? And I was like, oh my God, you might be right. So I went and looked, and it's pretty damn close. Since he came back from being injured, not beginning of the year, he had a nice little renaissance for 2 weeks. But overall, Rodgers was bad. And I thought yesterday, Connor Rodgers made a really good point on the Badlands podcast post-game yesterday. And sometimes you don't think about this stuff. And I thought about it. Mike, I'm curious your take. I thought Romo is super unprofessional when he announces the Bills. And I'm not trying to be in the media, bashing other people, but I think it's a little unprofessional. You're supposed to be commentating the game, not rooting. But he talked a lot about Rodgers. He's not going to be here next year. He's not retiring. He's going somewhere else. Devontae really wants 1,000. Aaron really wants 500. Just so much talk about that. And Connor was like, sometimes listen between the lines of these guys from a production meeting, or this is what happens, right? I just wonder if Aaron is the last 6 weeks, his tune changes a lot, but what's been really consistent is he keeps being like, oh, I've never been cut before, making the Jets look like the bad guy. He's going to get cut or retired on whatever day. The Jets should not be hiring the head coach and GM. As soon as they're hired, the first thing that should be happening is Aaron's not going to be with us. He's probably the best option on the field, right? Stat-wise and talent-wise, he is probably the best option. And I'm not even saying he's a cancer or anything like that. I don't think that's all entirely true. But they can't really run this back just the way it's gone. And yesterday was the way they had kept playing. I guess I'll stop here. The way they had been playing made us think, okay, I can make an argument. Hey, they're losing a bunch of one-score games, horrible coaching, terrible special teams, injuries galore. Like, we can fix a lot of the stuff. But the way it went yesterday, it was like he looked checked out. And I know it's against backups majority-wise. I know it's garbage time. But Tyrod Taylor is coming in garbage time twice this year and has thrown for like 250 yards and 3 touchdowns and has 2 incompletions. And the offense just looks better because he's running what's called. And he threw Garrett Wilson the ball in the red zone. Again, I know it doesn't really matter, but if I was a betting man right now next year, if you told me it was Fields and Tyrod and a rookie, I think that's a much better bet than Aaron Rodgers and Tyrod Taylor, part 2 or 3.
It
was bad. It was really ugly.
Yeah, it was bad. It was disappointing in the sense that at least
the Bills are really good. It's no shade, but the Bills punked the Jets yesterday. Like physically,
they had played hard. They had been in the, they could have won the Rams game. You go to the red zone, you don't punt, like you just can't score touchdowns. But like
Dolphins,
right? So okay, give me. At least they were doing what the Patriots tried to claim to be doing here.
Both Patriots and Jets got punked toughness wise.
Yeah, we wanted to be a pain in the ass. Well, the Jets have been a pain in the ass.
Yeah, they have, but. The biggest thing to me, and this is an indictment, and the Bills do this. I think Josh certainly flops quite a lot, but Josh is obviously extremely tough, and he's a really physical dude. The Bills are physical, no question about it.
Offensive line is tough.
From jump yesterday, they were punking them. Like it was like, we don't think you are about that life. We are going to get away with a lot of stuff. Again, look, I think the NFL does a horrible job with the replay stuff because you can throw a punch sometimes, but then other times you can't, and DK Metcalf got tossed earlier in the year for like a shove, but then yesterday, one of the Bills' backup offensive linemen close fist punched a dude in the face, and it was like, no, we don't care. After the play, got a flag, but like the NFL didn't intervene, and they intervene with the spot sometimes. They don't, whatever. The point, though, is the Bills came in and were like, we know you guys aren't good, and we know we like to get in your head. We're going to see how much you're willing to get into a brawl today. And like, that's a lot of teams do that. It's a very big tactic that the Lions do it. The Bills do it. A lot of these teams do it. The Jets were so not about it, and they punked them, and they ran it up, and they should have. They went for it on 4th down with like up 40. Like that, they were like, we don't like you. And it's fine. I am not bashing the Bills at all. You stop them if you don't want, but like that's something in the offseason that New England, the Jets, a lot of the Cowboys, you're going to have to figure out how to stop getting punked because that is teams see that on tape, and that's just a general overview of the NFL, football, any level. You see on tape, there's a little quit in there. You are going to it's bad. It gets bad quickly.
I say it all the time. I was actually having a little exchange with Dan Orlovsky from ESPN about George Pickens last week and Pickens or Christmas Day when Pickens they're running the all-go concept and Pickens stops right as he gets jammed to the line of scrimmage. And that, I think, allowed Jordan Reed to pull his eyes off of that area of the field, get to the middle. It was a bad throw. Might have been picked off regardless, but Pickens made no effort. And Dan was like, well, I don't think it had anything to do with the play. And I sent him a text. I was like, Dan, and I know that when the Chiefs were meeting this week, whether they put it in the scouting report or they just talk about it in the meetings, they say George Pickens doesn't always want to compete. And if he doesn't think the ball is going to come to him, he quits. So make him quit. And they made him quit in a big moment, or he was complicit in quitting. And then bingo, you get an interception that may or may not have changed the game. I don't know.
You play the Seahawks, the first thing you're doing in a receiver room is saying, get under DK's skin.
Yes, absolutely.
Corner room, get under DK's skin.
Yep.
And it works
because
every time.
He's shown it every single week. He does something stupid, and sometimes he gets called for it, sometimes he doesn't, but it's certainly there. All right, let's get to the next one, which turned out to be the game of the week. Yeah. Cincinnati edging Denver 30-24 in overtime.
Edging out Denver.
Yes. Joe Burrow led, count them, not one, not two, but 3 game-winning drives in this one. One, he takes them down the field. They score the touchdown. Defense, as they've done for the better part of the year, they give one up, takes them back down the field. Cade York misses a chip shot field goal. Evan McPherson, their better kickers on IR. And then, of course, finally, in overtime, he gets the game-winning drive going to T. Higgins. Just 2 things. Burrow, 39 of 49, 412 yards, 3 touchdowns, no picks. And T. Higgins who was going to make a lot of money regardless of what happened. But boy, it's nice to put some great tape out right before the end of the season. 11 catches, 131 yards, 3 touchdowns, including the game-winning score when he
and the play before that would even was probably the best play of the day.
Catch.
Yeah.
So Cincinnati still needs a lot of help. They still need to win their final game. They need both Miami and Denver to lose. Denver is playing Kansas City, which will probably roll out the backups, if not for the majority of the game, at least part of the game. But they're still alive, and despite still being crappy on defense, that's not a team that anybody wants to see in the first round of the playoffs.
Yeah, so just the Patriots and Jets news. Mike Vrabel's consulting agreement with the Browns expired today, meaning
start the interviews.
Yep. So I would expect the Jets and a few other teams to
Jets, by the way, interviewing Ron Rivera. I'm sure you're excited about that.
Yeah, I wonder. So just quickly on some of these, we'll start to get these leaked out this week. I don't mind interviewing those type of candidates because you might get an idea or two, or maybe they'd be a potential. Because if you Jets or any other team goes with a young offensive coordinator, do you like, is Ron maybe a defensive coordinator type, and you just want to get him in the building, see what his motivation's like. But yeah, that being their first 2 leaked GM and head coach candidates being John Robinson and Ron Rivera definitely wasn't like, wow, like yay. Look, with the Bengals, first of all, Joe Burrow's playing football at a insane level. 4,600 yards, 42 touchdowns, 70% completion, QBR is almost 80, quarterback rating 110. Like everything is special. I really hope, and I said this last week, I really hope we see Bengals, Bills, because Josh, and for as good as Lamar is, you could argue Josh and Joe are playing quarterback at the best level in the league right now. And I'd love to see both those, Josh versus Joe or Joe versus Lamar, like a third time or a second time, whatever. Like that's selfishly, I'd like to see that. I think it'd be the best matchup. They need a lot of help. I don't think the Bengals are poorly coached at all, but I also don't think that they have a plan all the time. Like, I understand the thinking of, hey, our defense sucks and we're going to give up points here no matter what. We know it, but we want to make sure we only have to give up, we can give up a touchdown, not give up a field goal. I still don't understand why you wouldn't have made them on second down. If Chase Brown's going to take a knee, and maybe he just did that on his own, I don't know. I'm not in Chase Brown's head. But if you're going to do that, then second down, you should have basically taken a knee, make Denver take their timeout and run down 40 seconds. I think they would have had about 35 or 40 seconds to go the length of the field. And you still could have scored on third down. Shoot, you could have gone for it on fourth down and ran the clock all the way down. You know what I'm saying? There's a million ways to go about it. And we saw this in the Jets game against the Jaguars, and people around the league texting me during that game going, do they not watch the Jets totally blow this and everyone talk about it for 4 hours about how stupid that was? I just didn't understand it. And too much can happen in today's NFL that some team could go down quickly and score. But when you have no timeouts, it makes it virtually impossible. The Broncos had the timeout in their bag, and it's the third down play, right? They throw it short. It's a great catch, but it's short of the sticks. If they don't have a timeout, the game's probably over. And if it's not over, they're running a crappy play there, and we don't get the whole – the coverage was terrible, and Mims made an amazing play. But Denver, I think, is kind of who we thought they are at this point in the year. I don't think they're great. I don't think they're bad. I just think they are a team that plays really hard. They have a really good offensive coach. The defense is really good. The quarterback is up and down. He threw one of the worst picks you'll see all weekend, and he makes one of the best plays you'll see all weekend. So that's what you're going to get from them. The Bengals are probably not making the playoffs, let alone winning a playoff game. But it's going to come down to, and we knew it at the time, that Patriots loss is going to come back and be like, that is just horrendous. I don't like the Steelers loss. You had the ball in overtime. The Ravens lost. You kick in a field goal to win the game in overtime. You end up losing right after that. There's the Cowboys. I mean, not the Cowboys, they beat the Cowboys, but all those different types of losses. The Commanders won. You didn't punt the whole game at home and you lose. So it stinks. It's going to feel like a lost season if they don't make it. But man, Joe's awesome, and Denver probably can keep a playoff game close. It feels like there's a ceiling for them, and it's definitely nowhere near the ceiling of some of these other teams.
Yeah, Marvin Mims has become their most important offensive player. They're finding ways to scheme him up the ball. He's so fast. and he's developed as a receiver. I did not know, speaking of the Bo Nix roller coaster, I did not know that he had that sting route 55, 60 yards in the air, or whatever he threw it. I didn't know that he had it in his bag, and he did. So he's, I give him credit, man. He's a gamer. But I am officially, I still want Cincinnati in, and it doesn't look like it's going to happen, but that would be my hope. Last game, and that happened, the last game of the weekend, the Sunday night game. Commanders beat the Falcons in overtime. Just a bad collapse by Atlanta. Up 17-7 at the half. They get outgained like 3-1 in the second half. Now the game back in the NFC South behind Tampa, who won big over Carolina yesterday. Atlanta has Carolina to finish the year. Tampa Bay has the flailing New Orleans Saints, who have fallen back to earth after their coaching change, or fallen back to where they were, if you will. Raheem Morris has some questions that he's got to answer for this one, right? The way they managed the game. What's up?
Is he just the coordinator?
He might be. I think the players respect him.
Yeah.
I just don't know that
they play hard for sure. I don't
know that he has the grasp of the big picture.
He gives off a lot of the criticism around hiring a defensive coach. Unfortunately, I'm not trying to be harsh, but it's his second job. I don't feel like I'm being. They've had some issues in terms of like the roster is a weird build, but it is a terrible division. And I'm curious at your thoughts on this. Like him and Dan Quinn, I think Dan Quinn's a little bit more of a proven head coach, as we know, and even coordinator for what it's worth. And probably he's a quarterback that's been playing at a really high level all year, as opposed to Penix, which had some really nice moments yesterday, but also had some bad misses. All in all, I say that to be like, they kind of both had just the clock management stuff, when to kick, when to go for it, when to not, when to do this, when to do that. They gave off a lot of the same like defensive guy in the big seat that maybe should just be the defensive guy. It was a little disheartening, honestly. It was like national TV, like not knowing when to call your timeouts. I'm not saying I would either. I'm just saying like that's a huge part of your job, and it's the second go around for both these guys. Like you got to be a little better. Yeah,
you're not being paid $10 million to have a firm answer on that. He is or thereabouts. Just quickly, it was tied to 24. Penix hit Darnell Mooney for a 25-yarder. They had 2 timeouts left. They don't call one of the timeouts. They wait 17 seconds before they run their next play. Morris said afterwards, I thought we could have gotten to the line of scrimmage faster. But, dude, when you see it's not happening, then you call it and you only waste 8 seconds or 10 seconds. You don't waste the full 17. They end up having to try a 56-yard field goal, falls short, and then Jayden Daniels does what Jayden Daniels does in overtime. Daniels, by the way, 227 passing, 3 touchdowns, the 1 pick, rushes for 127, and the Commanders are back in the postseason. I don't think that they're going to do anything in the postseason, but I think that they're a team, based on some of their personnel and certainly based on the way the quarterback is playing, that could be a pain in the ass on Wild Card Weekend.
I can't figure Washington out because I don't think they're a good team in the sense of like the whole roster like is a year away from. I think they need another year for sure.
They're like the Chargers, and they're both those teams are in the playoffs.
But it's like I also don't know that I want to play them. Like Jayden can get hot, and like the way he moves, and McLaurin's a bona fide one, and on defense, like they do fly around, they do make plays, and it'll be I don't know how they'll travel, but like they just beat Philly, and I know Hurts got hurt, but they've beaten a good team now. They've beaten a couple good teams that are playoff level teams. Washington, Atlanta, and the Chargers are all kind of in a little bit of the same bucket in a sense of like they have the talent that they could beat you on it, and that's why they're playoff teams, right? But like they have the talent they could beat you, and mostly the quarterback play, especially in Washington and LA. Like I don't know if you just don't want to play good quarterbacks. Like that's just the bottom line. But yeah, Washington has this like every game's going to be close. They're going to be in it. It's just, do they have the dogs, especially on defense? I worry sometimes like they don't exactly have a lot of these guys in their best moments in the NFL. A lot of them are like kind of hanging on, and it's good leadership and it's why they're there. It's worked out perfectly, but they paid a lot of guys to kind of hit the cap
Culture.
floor.
Yeah,
Culture.
culture. Like Dick Quinn has relationships with some of
Yeah.
these guys.
Hey, Bobby,
like,
can you come in for a year, 2 years, and reestablish who we are and how I go about things, Eckler, et cetera. Yeah, I don't know. They're going to have an interesting matchup. I they'll probably play the Rams, right? If things worked out this way, and
Yep.
the Rams on offense don't score points anymore. So
right.
but it's not like this is it's not they're not going into a crazy environment. The Rams on offense don't score, and their defense, until as much as I love the Rams, until 3 weeks ago, their defense was getting gashed. It just they don't make any sense to me. And so if I'm a Commanders fan, I'm like, hey man, like we could sneaky get to they could be a little Houston-ish where they get to the round 2, and next year everyone's like, oh, they're the team that's going to win the division. They're going to get a lot of hype. They'll probably make 1 or 2 moves, maybe at receiver. They have a very Houston-ish feel to them in this playoffs.
Yeah, I could totally see that being the case. Yeah, I was looking because obviously the Patriots are in desperate need of many players, but wide receiver being one of them, and T. Higgins will be a big name. Which, by the way, I know this is a Mike Brown thing. Why can't they pay him again? Why can't they pay Chase and Higgins? Like, I mean, they've screwed it up now to the point where they're not getting deals on either one of those guys. But Devontae Smith and AJ Brown, I mean, you can do it, and they're paying Hurts. You can do it if you want to. Just doesn't feel like they want to. But Higgins is going to have a big market, and I think Washington is certainly one of those teams. You pair him with McLaurin and Jayden Daniels, and you feel like, okay, we can do it with as well as anybody offensively. I think the Chargers will be another team that will be kicking the tires on him. Higgins on the outside, McConkey on the inside, a lot better than, say, Josh Palmer or Quentin Johnstone, who will catch it half the time, not all the time. So, yeah, interesting. They'll be fun. Like I said, I don't have a lot of faith in them. They're not going to make a deep run, but they're going to be somebody's pain in the ass in the postseason.
Mike, I wanted to ask you this quickly before we, finish up here. 3 openings at the moment. We're going into week 18. How many more openings do we get? Schefter said between 6 to 8. We usually get around 6 or 7. Some years it's been 10. Some years it's been less. What other jobs open if you had to predict, right before we turn the clock to 2024 or 2025? I apologize.
So Chicago, New York, Jacksonville. Is Indy based on not that Richardson stuff and
I think he's safe because they still were competitive. They'll argue Richardson had a weird year. Hey, like
fire Ballard and
I don't
keep
know. I
staking.
don't know if Ballard gets fired. He's like a cat with 9 lives.
I know somebody tweeted the other day or yesterday. It's like, they haven't made. I don't think they made the playoffs once with him as the GM.
No. With Phil when Rivers. No, was he the GM? He was the GM, wasn't he?
I think he was
Rivers.
the GM. So maybe no playoff wins. Maybe that's
no playoff wins. But my thing is, if you're bringing Richardson back, you got to bring Steichen back. No, like I would assume.
Yes,
but
Giants could be one, right? So Chicago, New Orleans, Jets, Jacksonville, I think is a definite. Could be the Giants. I don't. How does he get to
6? Yeah, I don't know. I guess Dallas, Giants, Miami.
Noise like Dallas keeps making noise like McCarthy's coming back.
Miami. I think it's Greer that gets fired, not McDaniels. So,
I mean, look, Ross he's a lunatic, so anything is possible there. But like, they struggled when Tua went down, and I think that was a little bit damning on McDaniel. Like, you couldn't find a way to create some more offense there. But yesterday, with Snoop Huntley being in the system a little bit longer, Snoop didn't look too bad. Like, he's not good, but like they got 20 points. They were semi-efficient yesterday offensively.
Yeah. Playing DTR,
geez,
everyone's favorite.
Would Cleveland pull the trigger on Stefanski?
There's the problem for Cleveland. Who would want that job?
Well, if you fire the guy who's won the Coach of the Year twice, including last year, and then you're saying, oh, yeah, we reworked Deshaun's deal, but you're going to have to put up with him for at least another year, if not 2, before we can really spread out the dead cap hit.
In New England,
Right.
I still really don't think they do it. How fast is Vrabel to coach if they do fire Mayo? Within a day? You'd have to know if you fire Mayo, you'd have to be like, we know Vrabel's taking this job, right?
Right. That's how they would think. How I would think was, if I'm going to fire him, I'm firing him, and I'm doing a search. And
Yeah.
I'm interviewing Vrabel, I'm interviewing Ben Johnson, I'm interviewing Liam Cohen, I'm interviewing whatever. Pick your names. Like, I'll interview Robert Saleh. I'm bringing in 15 guys. I want to talk to everybody because I didn't do it last year and I screwed the pooch on it. This time I'm not. But to your point and to the overall thinking and the vibe that I'm picking up, yeah, it would probably be Vrabel or bust.
Yeah. I don't know. I just was curious.
How about the Patriots and Jets competing for Mike Vrabel?
And then he goes to Jacksonville.
Screw both of you guys.
Yeah, the Jets end up with Matt Nagy and the
I don't want to interview Matt Nagy. Let me just put that out there.
The Patriots end up with Anthony Lynn, and we're just oh man,
that's depressing as hell. All right, and on that note, we're going to wrap up this edition of the All 32 Pod. Remember to like, listen, subscribe, rate, review, do all that stuff. We are found where you get all your podcasts. Also on YouTube, he is Will Parkinson. I'm Mike Giardi. We will see you at the end of the week to get ready for Week 18 and then postseason. See you then.
Playoffs, baby.